In this country, this confrontation, this drama with the Supreme Court getting involved means that we are about to have the U.S. Supreme Court meaningfully weigh in on this sledgehammer that Trump and his top campaign donor have taken to the U.S. government thus far, with no seeming regard for either the law or the Constitution. So we will see, probably for the first time, how the Supreme Court is oriented toward this radical change that has happened over the last 5.5 weeks in our country. And honestly, this is also important because of the way this came up. That midnight deadline we were looking at last night was set so firmly and so urgently by the federal judge who was hearing this case because he had to do it by motion to enforce. He had to do a motion to enforce because Trump really was ignoring that court's previous orders, right? And so when we look to see how the Supreme Court handles this tomorrow at noon, we're going to be looking to see how the Supreme Court handles that very scary issue, how this Supreme Court is going to treat the prospect of this president, this administration, potentially ignoring the courts. They have been joking about this and making, macho-sounding bluffs about this for a long time now, particularly from the Vice President, J.D. Vance. How is the Supreme Court going to deal with it now that it's real? Do they try to give him what he wants from the courts so that Trump doesn't break that glass, doesn't, smash through the brightest bright line that we have and effectively end the republic? Do they appease him because he's so scary, we better not make him defy a court order. We better make sure all court orders go his way. Or do they make clear to him that his powers as president actually don't allow him to defy the courts? To tell him that he's not always going to get what he wants from the courts. And when the courts tell him something he doesn't like, he has to obey the courts anyway. Do they tell him that if he does try to defy the courts, he is effectively declaring war on the United States of America? We'll see. We don't know how the U.S. Supreme Court is going to handle this. And we don't know how directly they're going to get at this key issue, but this case moves to them tomorrow at noon Eastern time. So eyes wide open on that and take it with all the seriousness it deserves. We've got the top Senate Democrat on the Judiciary Committee here tonight to talk about what happened yesterday in the Senate when Trump nominees for senior Justice Department positions told him and other members of the Judiciary Committee that they weren't sure that Trump should always obey court rulings. That happened in the Senate yesterday. The leading Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to be here talking with us about it in just a moment, ahead of tomorrow's Supreme Court actions on this case. It's a very chilling subject. It's one I take very seriously. It is absolutely the endgame discussion for us as a republic. It is as serious as it gets.